Hello and welcome to everyone watching today at this AGRF event. My name is Dr. Jo Puri, and along with my IFAD colleagues, Dr. Turaya Tricky and Stefania Linoci, we are delighted to be able to share with you some of the exciting work and investment opportunities provided by the International Fund for Agricultural Development, or IFAD, that are particularly relevant to our work in Africa. After my remarks, Turaya and Stefania will be talking about IFAD's work with the private sector. In particular, they'll provide more details on our new private sector financing program. But first, ladies and gentlemen, with COP26 just around the corner, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about IFAD's groundbreaking work in climate adaptation financing. Global climate finance flows surpassed $500 billion in 2017-2018. But less than 2% or 1.7% went to small-scale producers. More climate financing must be channeled to small-scale producers, and IFAD is best placed to do this. IFAD's Rural Resilience Program, or 2RP, is a new umbrella program that will focus on alleviating climate change drivers of food insecurity, irregular migration, and land degradation. The program will equip small-scale producers, landless poor, and their communities with the resources needed to implement locally appropriate, proactive resilience strategies. IFAD's 2RP program has three pillars. The first pillar is the Adaptation for Smallholder Agricultural Program, otherwise known as ASAP+. The second pillar is the Sustainability, Stability, and Security Initiative, or 3S, in Africa. And the third pillar is the Green Climate Fund's umbrella program for the Great Green Wall, for the Sahara and the Sahel. Let's start with our hugely successful program ASAP, and now ASAP+, the biggest climate fund in the world that targets small-scale farmers. This is a global fund, but let's find out how it is particularly helping farmers in Africa.
There are 33 million small farms in Africa. The small-scale farmers who work on them are on the front lines of climate change. Development organizations must devise new financial and programming instruments to address their complex and evolving problems. This is why the International Fund for Agricultural Development created the Adaptation for Smallholder Agriculture Program, or ASAP, back in 2012. ASAP is now in its third installment, ASAP+. ASAP+ aims at channeling $500 million in additional climate finance. The results can transform livelihoods. In Senegal, a project to reforest large areas of mangroves has provided thousands of jobs for local people and saved their homes.
ndax tey boo gisee géej gi jëlul suñu dëkk bi lu ñuy reboiser moo tax waaye bu ñu bàyyi woon ni mangrove bi dee ba dara nekkatu ci.
In Kenya, they have learned to grow crops that are more drought resistant.
No nye no kwa zeni muvea nundu wako kakumbundi zia kweka no kubanda muvea kana kuua ndo kwa nebinda ambana nena thelie yutokete yutwambie kuumia miondani na ndo kwa na wito twake that test.
ASAP has helped 5 million vulnerable small-scale farmers in 41 countries to build more resilient livelihoods. With ASAP+, we hope to help thousands more vulnerable people in Africa create profitable and sustainable livelihoods so that despite the changing climate, they can grow.
Let me now talk briefly about the 3S initiative. 3S aims to address migration from rural areas stemming from environmental degradation. 3S is working in 14 African countries, and it has three key outcomes. First, to restore agricultural lands, ecosystems, and forests. Second, to create green jobs and safeguard rural employment. And third, to prevent rural migration through a circular local economy while fostering culture, peace, and justice so as to lower risks of exposure to extremist activity and violence. Finally, let's talk about the third pillar, which is the Great Green Wall for the Sahara and the Sahel. This works in 20 African nations. Let's find out more. So as you can see, we have already achieved tremendous things through our work in climate change adaptation funding, but there's still much more to come. These are our commitments. For 2RP, we aim a resource mobilization target of $1.5 billion overall. We are also committing that 2RP will have a reach of 7 to 10 million people. We are also committing that the area of land brought under climate resilient management practices will be between 3.2 and 4.3 million hectares. And finally, we are committing that the amount of greenhouse gas emissions avoided and or sequestered through 2RP will be anywhere between 96 and 130 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalents over 20 years. IFAD has tremendous plans in the area of climate adaptation. And we hope you can join us in this journey to make sure that small-scale farmers and producers in Africa get greater access to these financing programs. Thank you for watching. I'm now going to hand you over to my colleague Turaya Tricky, who will talk about our work with the private sector.
Thank you, Jo. Hello and welcome. My name is Turaya Tricky. I'm here today to talk about an exciting new venture that IFAD has embarked on in the last few years, the upscaling of our private sector work. Over the past 40 years, IFAD has delivered billions to support public sector investments aimed at making rural economies and food systems more inclusive, productive, resilient, and sustainable. This entails significant collaboration with private sector partners. While these partnerships delivered good results, we wanted to make a bigger impact and accelerate progress in the fight against poverty and hunger. So in spring 2020, we launched our private sector financing activities, which are now formalized through the private sector financing program. Through this program, IFAD seeks to invest into and crowd in up to $1 billion in private sector investment and expertise that will help small-scale producers and rural communities. This funding will focus on job creation for youth, women economic empowerment, and strengthened resilience to climate change, both through adaptation and mitigation efforts. The private sector financing program offers both regular and blended finance solutions, including loans, risk mitigation instruments, and equity. This financing program is an unprecedented one, leveraging on the extensive experience of IFAD, a leading institution in the area of agriculture and rural development. The fund will focus on areas where access to finance is most challenging, and it will have the biggest impact. It will seek to address specific value chain bottlenecks, increase market participation through collaboration between small-scale farmers and the private sector, promote climate-smart agriculture, and encourage technology-based innovations and agtech solutions. We have already supported few SMEs and financial institutions based in Africa, and there are some more exciting new projects on the way. Stefania, over to you for some more details.
Thank you, Turaya. IFAD's first private sector investment was approved in April 2020 and was an investment of 8.4 million euros into the ABC Fund, thanks to the generous contribution from the Swiss government, which provided resources to support this investment. The ABC Fund is an externally managed blended investment fund. The fund is sponsored by IFAD. It seeks to shine a light and encourage investment and technical assistance in the often overlooked agribusiness sector. It focuses on investments in farmer organizations, financial intermediaries, and agribusinesses, small and medium-sized enterprises that help drive job creation, particularly for young men and women. The investments should also be focused on poverty eradication, food security, and inclusion in developing low and middle-income countries. In December 2020, IFAD embarked on its second private sector investment, a senior loan of $5 million to Babangona in Nigeria. Let's find out more.
Youth unemployment in Nigeria and Sub-Saharan Africa is massive. In the past 20 years, roughly 20 million youth entered Nigerian workforce, causing youth unemployment to spike over 60%. And in the next 20 years, 4 times that number of people are estimated to be entering the Nigerian workforce.
Matasa su daina wannan Boko Haram, su bar wannan shaye-shaye da harka na banza. So sai zuwan wannan babban gona da ta zo domin ta tallafa ma manoma marasa abin yi don ta taimaka musu su ci gaba su rufa ma kansu asiri.
In July this year, the UN's International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, signed a loan agreement with the Nigerian company Babangona as part of the new IFAD private sector financing program. The ambitious program is part of IFAD's broader efforts to address rising poverty and hunger issues.
The underlying structural reason why smallholder farmers are poor is low economies of scale. Despite their hard work, they're getting yields that are typically about 20% of the yields of other farmers in other developing countries. So if you're able to make small-scale farming more profitable, you'll create market forces that will draw millions of young people into the sector as entrepreneurs.
The IFAD loan will help support 377,000 small-scale rice and maize producers in Nigeria with training, quality inputs, and marketing services, providing jobs, hope, and sustainable livelihoods for hundreds of thousands of young people in Nigeria.
One of the key features of Babangona's model is, in fact, its focus on improving uptake of technology and climate-smart agricultural practices by smallholder farmers. 110,000 jobs are expected to be created through IFAD funding by 2025. Babangona will put particular focus on creating jobs for women and youth. 65,000 jobs should benefit women as small farmers, entrepreneurs, and employees.
So exciting times ahead. These are our commitments. By the end of 2024, IFAD will have raised up to $200 million in funding for the private sector financing program, which shall be used to mobilize and crowd in up to $1 billion investment, focusing and catering to the needs of small producers and rural poor. 90% of the program's investment will be in low and low-middle income countries, as well as fragility-affected countries with a great focus on Africa. A minimum of 50% of the private sector financing program investment will promote climate-smart activities as well as private sector adaptation and mitigation efforts to fight climate change effects. We expect to reach up to 5 million rural poor, 50% of which will be women. Thank you for watching today. We hope you have learned something about our work in 2 very important sectors. And more importantly, we hope you will join us in this exciting journey to help improve the livelihoods of millions of small farmers and producers in Africa.